Have you guys ever thought about creating your own podcast? I'm going to give you some information about Anchor, which is the easiest way to make a podcast. Number one, Anchor is free. Anchor provides a creation of different tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on different platforms. You can make money from your podcast, and Anchor is everything you need in one place. All you have to do is download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. How you guys doing today? Today's episode is about prenuptial agreements, aka prenups. This is a touchy subject that everybody have a different opinion about when it comes to deciding if a prenup is necessary or not. So what I'm going to do in today's episode is talk about the business side of prenups, and then we'll talk about the life side of it, and I give you some opinions on if it's necessary or not. What I did before this episode was put out a poll on Instagram and on Facebook to find out if people believe if prenups are necessary or not. So before the end of the episode, I give y'all the results of those numbers, and we'll talk about it some more. Okay, so before we get into the opinion side of prenuptial agreements, I'm going to talk about some factual information that you guys should know when it comes to putting prenuptial agreements together. Now, each state have different laws regarding prenuptial agreements, so you have to always check the state you're in. And I believe it depends on which state you got married in that determines breaking down your prenuptial agreement. Now, when it comes to these agreements, they have to be fair, and circumstances dictates fairness. So a prenuptial agreement cannot be one-sided. If a judge takes a look in the unfortunate event that you guys are getting a divorce and he determines that this agreement is one-sided, he can decide to throw that out. So you have to be fair, and you have to both parties have to fully disclose their assets. So yeah, you have to be transparent. And another thing, both parties have to have an attorney. In some states, it is required. In other states, it is not required. It is still highly advised that you have an attorney, or proper representation when it comes to you guys putting that agreement together, because this is something that would need to be completed and agreed upon way in advance. You cannot get it done at the last minute. I mean, you could, but it's not going to help you, because a judge can throw out an agreement that was made days before a wedding or the night before a wedding. They can't throw that out because one party can plead that they had to sign this agreement under duress. And I believe the technical term is signature under duress, something like that. So, yeah, in the beginning days when everything is fine, communication is good, you guys have to put that agreement together. You have to have proper representation. Now, let's move on to the opinion side of things when it comes to prenups. There's a big debate. Well, there's always debate about if a prenup is necessary or not. So I put out a poll on my Instagram and on my Facebook asking people if they feel like a prenup is necessary. So let me just go over the results with you guys. On Instagram, it was 50-50, which is crazy. So 50% of voters felt like a prenup is necessary, and 50% felt like it wasn't necessary. Now, on Facebook, it was 60-40. 60% felt like it was necessary, and 40% felt like it wasn't necessary. Now, the interesting thing is, out of the 60% who felt like it was necessary, majority of the voters were women. Now that shocked me because the I expected it to be majority of men voting yes, but it was mostly women voting yes. So that's interesting. And when it comes to prenups, I believe that everybody's circumstance is different. Every couple have different circumstances. So, you know, I think you have to remember that a prenup, I think a lot of people hear the word prenup and think of divorce. I think it's important to understand that a prenup is part of smart financial planning because you never know what's going to happen. And a prenup is not a lack of trust, it is a faith in your own judgment. Another thing you have to remember is that a prenup is an agreement. So it's an agreement between you and your partner. So you don't have to feel like a prenup is not one, it can't be one sided anyway. A prenup has to be fair. So a prenup is not, hey, you have to agree to these terms. Like, no, this is something that you both will have an attorney for. You both can have a mutual agreement before you go down the road, before you go down the route of getting married. A prenup can help avoid arguments in the case of a divorce. It can clarify financial rights. It is a positive. It's not a negative because a divorce can be costly. So I believe both parties would rather have a private agreement between each other rather than leave it up to the state to decide what's going to happen in the event of a divorce. Because you have to remember, it doesn't matter how deeply you're in love with somebody, it doesn't matter how much feelings you both have for one another. If you both decide to get married, under law, that's considered a contract between you two. That is an economic contract. So a prenup is faith in your own judgment. It's not a distrust in the other person. Because some people can be deeply in love and together and be partners without getting married, without having that marital contract, and they can be perfectly fine. So a prenup is something that's considered if you guys are thinking about getting married. This is something that you guys can discuss. It's an agreement. So yeah, that's my take on it. That's my, opinion. You guys do whatever you feel is best for you and your significant other. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys subscribe to the podcast. There'll be a lot more coming. You guys take it easy.